This is Lynn Gilliard. Welcome to Where I Went Wrong and How I Got Right. Hello, listeners. I'm back for my second episode of Where I Went Wrong and How I Got Right. This is a brand new podcast that has been an idea of mine to start for a while now. For this episode, I'm just going to jump right in with the new title, which is Borrowing and Spending Like Crazy at College. This is an episode of Where I Went Wrong and How I Got Right. Borrowing and spending like crazy at college. This was definitely on the top 5 list of the most ill-advised things that I've done in my life. Was getting myself into debt at the age of 18. And I have been in debt since that age, since the day I went to college. Let me just start with a little bit of backstory. When I was a young girl, I was so dedicated to being a saver. I worked since I was 14 years old and I saved. The only bill that I had back then was like my little party line. You know, when you were young, you had a little phone in your bedroom, and I paid for my own phone in the bedroom. And I think I might have had a beeper back then, but those were pretty much my only bills. So I basically was very frugal with my money, and I saved a lot of money. I had a checking account and a savings account back then, and was very good with money. That all ended when I became a college student. It ended very quickly and very abruptly. So I found out that I was accepted at a very good school. I had been a very good student. I was accepted to the college of my choice, and I was just over the moon and sailing on the clouds and just so happy about that. The first day, I think it was the first day or the first week that I got on campus, there was an orientation event where there were tables set up so that you could start a bank account there, so that you could do this and do that. And one of the tables was for a credit card company, which I will withhold their name, even though they have played a major role in why I'm still dealing with a lot of debt issues. But there was this credit card table, and I came by and they explained to me, I had no idea what a credit card was at that age. They said that they could approve me right there for a card to help me with my college expenses and tuition and all whatever other issues I had. And I signed up for it. I was like, wow, this is great. You mean I can just sign up for this and just use this card whenever I want? And like that was the worst. That was a really bad decision to get that credit card, because that credit card followed me for years, that one sign up. So I didn't understand how a credit card worked at the age of 18. And while I accept responsibility for the bad choices I made with that credit card, buying clothes, buying makeup, I had no knowledge of what I was doing and what I was getting myself into by using that card so frequently as if it was a checking account. I would pay the minimum monthly payment. You know, they would send the bill. It would probably like $20 a month or something like that, and I would pay it, and I would still keep on swiping. They would continue to raise my interest rates. They would continue to raise my available balance. They would raise it by 1,000, and they would raise it by 5,000, and they just kept on raising it. This is a horrible thing to do to someone who is so young and naive and financially uneducated about what this all entails. So, I mean, and especially being that when I was in college, I was very cash strapped. I didn't have a lot of cash. I had a job. I worked a part-time job, and I uh, used most of that money to pay for my expenses and such. But having that credit card was just like the safety net that I always used it for shopping and doing other things because it was there. But I didn't realize what the amount of interest that I was paying and that I would be responsible for. The fact that raising my limit was not a blessing. It was a curse. It was a bad thing. It was not a good thing for them to keep raising my limit. And fast forward, I guess, to graduation day. When I graduated, I don't know the exact figure, but I was probably about $20,000 in debt to this credit card. So I was continuing to make minimum payments on the card. And if you ask any financial guru, they will tell you that that's not the way to do it. You have to pay more than the minimum so that you can get out of the debt. But I had no concept or serious goal of getting rid of the debt because it was so high. I mean, how do you pay off $20,000 as a 22-year-old person? So, $20,000 in debt when I graduated. I had all kinds of student loans as well. So basically, I was stuck in debt. I had debt that was way over what a 22-year-old should have to deal with. As time went on, I got myself into some financial situations where I was pretty much dependent on that credit card, and I had to use it for living expenses and gas and paying certain bills, and the balance just kept climbing until one day I looked at the bill. It was $30,000 that I was in debt, but I was still making the minimum payments. The credit card company stopped raising my limits, which was a good thing in retrospect, but at the time I realized that I had gotten myself into a real pickle. So it got to a point where they changed the credit card rules, and it turned out that I would have to start making a payment that was larger than the minimum so that I had a serious chance of paying off the debt. So it got to the point where I was paying more for my credit card bill than I was paying for my rent. I was paying something like $700 a month for my credit card versus about $700 for my rent at that time. And now, obviously, you can tell that I was in serious financial distress. So I'm in this situation where I'm over $30,000 in debt. I'm paying between $700 and $800 a month in credit card payments. I have student loans up the wazoo that I'm responsible for. I have a basic job. I'll tell you in a future episode, that's another where I went wrong situation. Um, wow, just telling these stories, it kind of like, it's difficult to tell, but it's just amazing that I even experienced a lot of the things that I did and that I'm still here and I'm still talking about it and I'm still, the types of situations that I've been through are pretty out there. I mean, to be paying $700 a month on a credit card is just totally ridiculous to think of that now. But that was my normal life, and I was making those payments for like 10 years straight of $700 a month. Can you imagine how much interest the credit card company got off of me just because I was making minimum payments? I would make the payment, but then whatever balance was available, I would use it for gas and for food and for whatever else. So I was never ever going to get out of that debt. So years later, I'd say I continuously paid that debt faithfully for about 10 years. Is that about right? I'd say about 10 straight years I paid that credit card on time every month. I don't know how I did it, but I did it, especially being that my job history was kind of spotty after college because of some poor choices that I made regarding my career. So anyway, one day I tried to use a check against my credit card to pay a bill, which I did regularly, and it never was a problem. But these checks that you write, when you write a check to against a credit card account, they come with ridiculous fees and high interest rates, higher than what you're already paying in interest. So I would write these checks to pay off these balances that I had at for other bills, and my credit card company called me. No, actually, the check didn't go through. They rejected the check, and so I called my credit card company, And they started asking me all of these questions. I guess they looked at my account history and how I was continuously making these payments, but then I would use the money and what have you. So they basically were investigating me, and I got nervous, so I just hung up the phone. And what they did was they just closed my account. They closed it and they said basically you can't use the card anymore. And that was the most devastating thing to me at that time for them to do that, because while I was still making regular payments and I never missed a payment, now I couldn't use the card after making a payment to cover my other bills. So that was the beginning of a very stressful situation where I wasn't able to make my bills every month. I'd say another couple of years went by. It got to the point where I couldn't make the credit card payment. I had a lot of other bills. I had a mortgage to pay at that time. Thank God I was able to even get the mortgage with the amount of debt that I had. But I had a lot of bills, and it got to the place where I had to file bankruptcy. And that was one of the saddest days of my life, was when I had to go and see a lawyer and pay her $1,000 so that I can get some type of relief from what I was going through, because I was totally over my head with money issues by that time. And all of this stuff, I always go back to college, because all of this stuff happened in college. College was a wonderful time for me. It was so exciting. It was so fun. I had a great time in college. I mean, I wouldn't take that experience away for the world. But college really put me in a situation where I would struggle for many, many years, and still to this day am sort of struggling behind the amount of debts that I have to deal with. Um, Not only with the student loans, but like I said, about this credit card debt that I initiated the first week that I was in school. So I had to file bankruptcy. That was a horrible thing to have to do, because when you file bankruptcy, you have bad credit for 7 years or more, and it's impossible to get credit. Nobody is going to even consider you for anything regarding credit. No credit cards, which is not so horrible to me at this point, because now I see what credit cards do. But you can't get credit. Like, basically couldn't even get a rent a center credit when you have bankruptcy on your history. So I had to do it because I just didn't have the money. It was a hard time. I think it was around the financial, like, or the aftermath of the financial struggle. Basically, it was just a hard time financially for me, and I had to do it. And thankfully, I was able to get rid of that debt and do what I had to do. But I mean, the bankruptcy is something that follows me to this day, and it's not something that I would recommend for anyone to have to do. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. Um, I mean, so many they make you feel so guilty about doing that for yourself as an individual person. But if you look at most of the businesses, and a certain person who will remain unnamed, who is right now at the top of the country, they file for bankruptcy all the time. You know, as a person, as an everyday person, if you get yourself into a situation where you have to do that, you have to do that. And I was in that situation. Even though I did get out of a lot of financial problems that I had, the effects of going through all these debt woes after college has definitely stayed with me. It has made me very sensitive to financial matters, I would say. So I would say where I went wrong, to go along with the theme of this series. The first way that I went wrong was definitely making an uneducated financial decision, which was getting a credit card and using it without understanding what it was. But when you're 18 years old and you're experiencing your first taste of freedom and independence, you make a lot of silly choices. You make a lot of silly decisions. I would say that getting into that type of debt reduced my confidence in my ability to manage my finances. Because, as I said, when I was a little girl, I was so good at saving. I did great putting money in the bank. I even had money, I believe I had a little bit of money saved up even when I went to college. But all of that changed when I went away. I would also say that another issue, which I will talk about in a future episode, was at that time I was getting into a place where I started to settle for things. After college, I didn't believe in my ability as a smart person, or how can I say this? I didn't believe in my ability to make smart choices financially or career wise. So I would settle for just about anything. And I started settling for low paying jobs and just trying to get by. And that energy of just accepting, like, oh, well, this is the best I can do, that stayed with me also. That continued to be a part of my life and was part of the reason why I wasn't able to get out of the debt, because I didn't believe in my ability to make more money. I would say where I went right was finally accepting one day that I couldn't do it on my own and that I needed help. And that was when I contacted a lawyer to file the bankruptcy. And as much as that may have been a tough choice and most people would judge me for that choice, I know that it was what was necessary for me. If I would have continued in the place where I was, it would have been even worse for me. So it was actually a good thing for me at that time to do what I did. Another way that I got right was realizing that it was possible and okay to live a cash only lifestyle. I had gotten into the habit of using credit cards for everything. And to this day, I still see a lot of people using credit cards for every purchase, even down to their grocery store purchases and gas purchases. But I learned after that financial ordeal that it's fine to live a cash only lifestyle. Sometimes using a debit card to make purchases isn't the best thing because you have no limit. You don't, I mean, your balance is your limit, but when you're out shopping and you're just swiping and swiping, even on a debit card, you don't really have a good control on what you're spending. So sometimes it's better to just withdraw the cash that you need, and that is it. Once that cash runs out, your shopping runs out. So that was a good lesson that I learned. Living a cash only lifestyle is actually a positive thing, a good thing. If you're interested, I would look up the envelope method of doing your budget every month, the envelope method. So that's my second episode of where I went wrong and how I got right. This podcast, as I'm realizing, as I'm saying it, I'm starting to realize that it is harder than I thought it would be in my mind to tell a lot of these stories because they are things that you basically want to keep to yourself forever. You don't want to tell people these things, but I know and I realize that these are issues that a lot of women and everyone and people in general go through. And there's a lot of people who are going through it silently, as I was, quietly, and not and thinking that they are alone. But a lot of us go through these issues, and a lot of us make a lot of silly mistakes that can follow us for a long time. Just want to freestyle for a minute. I don't even know if I'm going to include this in the podcast, but I just want to talk about life for a minute, about how we go through all of these things. And I don't understand why we go through these things. Why is it that we have to go through so many struggles? I know that the struggles that we go through are of our own making. Like every issue that I tell you about in this podcast, it was preventable if I would have made a better choice. But how can you make a better choice if you're not advised or guided in some way by someone who can tell you what the right choices are? If you don't have guidance when you're ignorant of a situation, especially when you're young, how do you make those better choices. And sometimes I just really wonder how people are expected to know better when they don't know. You have to have someone, like we need more mentors, we need more programs to assist people. And I know that this is a calling on me as well. We need more people to give the advice and the guidance that young people need so that they don't make these same mistakes in life. And I'm hoping that with this podcast, that it will be a first step in that direction for me, because my best skill is writing and speaking, really, in audiobooks and now in this podcast. So I'm hoping that this will be helpful to someone. But it's hard to know what to do right if you're never taught how to do what's right. I'll have other thoughts on this in the future, but thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode, which will be entitled Staying in Park for Too Long. That's episode 3, Staying in Park for Too Long. I hope you'll stay tuned. Love, Lynn. This podcast, Where I Went Wrong and How I Got Right, is brand new and definitely needs some help to be all that it can be. If you would like to support its growth, please support one or more of my books, which are available at Amazon and Audible.com. Visit youmatterbooks.com for the full listing of titles by Lynn Gilliard, including Survive, Live or Thrive, and Let Him Chase You.